Okay, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining today. My clock says 12 o'clock, so I think we're going to go ahead and get started with today's producer-led webinar. Thank you all for joining. Uh, Today's webinar was rescheduled from January, so thanks for joining back with us. We have a really exciting lineup for you all today. We're coming up just about on a year. We started these producer-led webinars a year ago in March, so we're excited that we've been able to keep them going, and we're always continuously looking for new ideas and speakers that you all, our audience, would like to hear from. So if you have feedback and ideas, please let us know. These webinars are hosted by the Discovery Farms program and the Department of Ag and Consumer Protection producer-led grant program. My name's Erica Gentry. I work for the Discovery Farms program in Wisconsin. Announcement: if you are a 2021 grant recipient, producer or partner in the producer-led grant program, the workshop is going to be virtual this year, and registration is actively open on the DATCAP website. That workshop is coming up on February 22nd and 23rd. So if you're interested in attending, make sure you get registered for that. So today's webinar is titled Conservation in the Field and in the Classroom. And we are joined today by Tracey Arnold. She's from the Portage County Land and Water. And we're going to also be talking with John and Melissa Eron, who are farmers in Portage County, and they're also the recipients of the 2020 Aldo Leopold Conservation Award. If you have questions as we're going on throughout the webinar, please type those into the chat box and keep yourself muted so we don't get any distractions or feedback, but we welcome questions all throughout the webinar. Just type them in the chat and we'll make sure that they get asked to our speakers today. So we're going to start out with a short video about John and Melissa Eron.
I'm a third generation farmer, 2 generations dairy farm, and now cash cropper, a lot of no-till, cover crops especially. And it's really, I'm farming the way I wanted to farm.
So I grew up on a dairy farm in southeastern Minnesota, and meeting John, we both had the same thoughts that we wanted to farm.
I remember in my early 20s saying to myself, I want to be able to do this, but I want to be able to do other things too.
Ever since I've known John, he's always been a big person of continuing to work for the future generation. So being able to repair his products, his tools, and just working to conserve the land, working on new projects.
Many of the things I do, they're really not in the book, but I just like trying new things. And the whole intent is to keep the soil on the land. We can make a lot of mistakes, but if we have our soil moving off our property, good luck getting that back. I remember riding in the back of the old Massey tractor with my dad when he was out working the fields when I was a kid. And it was so much fun being there. That was some of the best times I had, just hanging out with dad, out in the fields and just kind of getting a sense of what we're doing, the importance of being a farmer, producing something. I always, as a kid, would watch neighbors plowing right up to the fence lines, and you get a big rainfall event come through. And we just watched the gully erosion out of there. I like seeing the water running. I didn't like seeing the soil move. And I never wanted that. I wanted to figure out a way to not have that, but still be able to farm.
John actually developed the Eron farmland conservation theory before we even met. It was neat to see that somebody so young had a plan for the future. He's been able to work up the quality of our soils just by doing no-till operations, planting cover crops, and improve the soil health and soil quality.
I put a presentation together for the local environmental group. I showed them how my intent was to collect that excess water that's running off the fields with the soil, and to have it run through the ditches, the waterways and whatnot. And we'd collect it as much as all possible in these large ponds, these stormwater basins at the edge of the field. And then through the summer months, when it get dry out, then at that point, I'd want to reapply that water back on the fields. And the most efficient way to do that is with irrigation systems. So I actually bought some used irrigation, refurbished it, hauled it in, and then we set up some pumps to basically pump that water back. So all the excess comes off the field, goes into the ponds, and hit midsummer when we need the water, we can pump that water back out in the field through that center pivot. Been doing that for well over a decade now. There was a lot of adaptations I had to make as I was going to be able to build it, but I can keep adding to it. There's so many things that I want to do yet with all these irrigation ponds and stuff that I've only just begun to start playing with now.
A lot of the neighbors at first, when he started implementing a lot of these new conservation practices, were a little bit skeptical. Since then, they've taken up a lot of these conservation practices. They're getting to know him, knowing that he's taking care of the land, and that's what's really important.
I realize my vision of how I'm doing it can be significantly different than others, but it feels right to me. I think most of my successes were actually failures out here, and later we found out, how much we learned from that. It just fits my personality. I just like doing things just what feels right, and try to make a living by that. The whole movement with the farmer-led groups, it's really got a chance to work. People truly invest themselves in it. There's so many things going on in the environment that we can't change, but there's so many things we can.
We actually own a wedding barn that we rent out, obviously, for weddings, but the main purpose of the original barn aspect was to host agriculture meetings. Through that, our event barn business has really blossomed, but even more so, it's giving us the opportunity to educate people. We are one of the very few barns that are a working farm, and people are so amazed at that. It's really given us an opportunity to provide outreach for those people that aren't used to farming anymore. And one of the big things we like to do every year is inviting grade schools out to our farm to educate them about different types of conservation practices. For us, it's a neat opportunity because we have children of our own, that getting to see them, the light bulb moment where they're learning about something that they can lay onto their parents, onto just their friends, is a neat outreach opportunity that we have.
So when we got the call that we won the award, I was a bit surprised, and especially when I found out that the interest was with these ponds, because it's just something just so normal to me.
We were very surprised to find out that we won, knew that this was a very prestigious award, and never thought that we would actually be the recipient of it.
It was really neat looking at it in the respects that this is a community award to me. I work so much with the community, with the agricultural groups, the environmental groups. This is an honor for the entire community because we've all worked together for these things.
Never in our wildest dreams did we ever think that somebody so young like us would ever win this award, but it's been a great opportunity. Just being able to build up those relationships with the local farmers, the local neighbors, that people now know who we are.
Okay, thanks. Sorry if we had a couple glitches there. I have a little bit of slow internet, but with that, I'd like to welcome John and Melissa Eron. You guys can feel free to unmute yourselves and share your video. Hello, welcome, and congratulations for receiving that awesome award, the Aldo Leopold Conservation Award. So why is conservation an important piece on your farm, and how do you keep it as one of your main goals at the top of your list from year to year?
You always got to ask a question when a guy's thinking about the concrete he's got to pour tomorrow. It's this all started when I was just a kid. I always remember just kind of watching how everybody farmed, and I love working with farm machinery. Big passion of mine is just rebuilding stuff. I just I love mechanical things, but I would watch people, and in certain respects, kind of do some harm to the land, and just how things would change. Looking at fence lines, there's areas where you see a fence line, and all of a sudden, where the field starts, there could be a foot or better drop, and you just look at the amount of soil that was lost. Things like that really stood out to me when I was a kid, and I wanted to find something that was different, something a thought that I had when I was young. Everybody says I'm a bit of an old soul, but I wanted to figure out some type of practice that we could kind of consider timeless in a way, that it's really 10 years from now, 50 years from now, or longer, that it's really not going to lose its vitality. And at the time when I started setting this irrigation stuff up, there was no real look at as far as doing cover crops and no-till. It was something I was thinking about, but it was on the back burner. My big thing is, grow the best crop I can, but I want to keep the soil here, and I want to figure out, unique ways on how to do that. And it just, everything kind of grew from there. I mean, a few years after I got all the pivots up and running, I started switching over to no-till and cover crops, and kind of realized that we're no longer seeing that soil show up in my ditches and in the pond. And it's cleaner water coming into there. So that was kind of exciting to see. So always wanted to do that. I know Melissa grew up on a dairy farm with her parents over in Minnesota, and different challenges and stuff there. Anything you want to mention about your farm?
Sure. So where I grew up is southeastern Minnesota, so lots more hills, just different way of farming practices. So coming here, the land is so flat, and it gives John the opportunity and us to experiment with different things and try something new.
Yeah, so in the video, we saw a little bit of snapshots of your irrigation pond system. Can you explain that more, how it works and how it's set up, and what gave you the idea to do this?
Yeah. Well, the idea kind of stems from, picture a 7 or 8 year old kid riding around through town and going to a local filling station and wondering why that, the new filling station across the road, why they're excavating out a big pond area. And then you start realizing and talking to people, you're like, well, that's, we have to have more land when we have one of these sites, because we've got all the stormwater runs into those ponds. And I started thinking about that, and looking at the farm, I'm like, well, a lot of these areas, especially it gets real sandy when you start heading to the south of us, whatnot, and kind of the central sands area. And I realized, like, well, I wonder if I clay line these things. So as a kid, I would actually play around with my Tonka trucks and stuff like that. And I remember Ma got a little mad because I tore up a section of our lawn to do this, but I started making like little mock areas of what the fields would look like. And I would play around, I'd build little hills and stuff and little berms. And then, you find a garden hose and you just run some water out there and start playing with it. And, I remember very well, kind of all the way up through like age 10 in particular, just playing around with this idea of we don't want to see, droughts. The drought of '88, I remember so much of that year. It was to see neighbors lose their farms because they simply couldn't get enough hay off of it. I remember one guy in particular, 80-acre field, and he was lucky to get one small square bale on a 10-acre piece at a time. So things like that really stuck with me, and I just decided if I want to be able to farm and do this stuff, I got to get smart about it. So the pond sites, when we started looking at it, we basically put the pond obviously in the lowest spot of the field, so that's where all the water drains through. And then the topsoil from the sites, we use that back up on the fields. We just basically took some land levelers and stuff and leveled it back in. And then the fill, it was, we got really nice clay around here. So most people don't think it's nice, but when you can use it for something. So the actual, all the subsurface clay that we pulled out of the majority of the ponds, I hauled over to by my parents' family farm, and we used that to actually build a building site for our grain facility. So with the exception of only two of the pond sites where we just use the topsoil on the field and actually mounded up a neat area where we use for our tours and stuff, it kind of elevates you 20, 30 feet in the area so you can really get a good overlook. With the exception of those two sites, all the rest of the fill was all used for building site. So we recycled everything we could with it, but and then with the pivots, always like seeing pivots. And I was a subcontractor for a few irrigation companies here back in the early 2000s. So, kind of knew everybody, and I did a lot of work breaking down old machinery, helping set up the new stuff. So when the time came, I had the knowledge and the contacts to be able to get everything set up very efficiently. So a lot of people ask, what kind of price per acre are we looking to do something like this? Buying a new pivot and putting in a well, most guys are right around $1,000 a irrigated acre. Doing this project myself, obviously I can't really figure in what my time was all worth, but we averaged somewhere around $400 an acre, $400 to $500 per irrigated acre with digging a pond, setting up the used equipment. Obviously it was, I had quite a discount with me doing the work myself, but it worked out well. And probably the coolest part was when 2012 came around and we got the big drought, we basically paid for all that equipment in 1 year. We went from 30 bushel corn to, in some spots, nearly 300 bushel an acre corn. So that was something else to finally get a payback on that.
Yeah, definitely came at the right time. So it's mentioned that you used some local contacts and resources. Can you explain like where you started out with finding some of these resources, or if you could provide some advice if someone was looking at implementing a project similar to this on their farm? Where's a good place to start?
Well, the best place is obviously your local land and water office. I remember actually before I even started some of these projects, I got a opportunity to meet with Dan O'Connell. I actually don't think it was on the best terms up front because there was an issue with another operator in the area. And so the first time I got to meet him, it was a bit confrontational with just some stuff going on. And I kind of realized like, hey, I've got a resource for some of this stuff. And didn't take long, and Dan and I were working very closely on this. And he brought a lot of ideas to me, a lot of technical advice. So I had, I was pretty smart with what I was doing, more ambition than you could think of. I was basically 20 years old at the time. So, but having Dan, you take ambition, you just need some knowledge to really be able to sculpt that, and that's what the local land and water department brought for me, and we just started working from there. There was I had a tendency to my ambition tend to get ahead of the paperwork once in a while, so I ran into a couple hiccups there, let's call them, but it all worked out in the end. If I were to do some more projects like this again, I've kind of got it figured out, how I need to go about it, but it takes a little bit with the paperwork and stuff because big thing is let them know your end project, what you need to do, but there's a lot of things that need to be done, and everybody's got different zoning. So like in Portage County, we don't have as much of the I can't remember the name of it, but we ran into a hiccup in Wood County in particular with a couple of pieces because there was a shoreland zoning ordinance. Basically, we can't have ponds or anything within 300 feet of a waterway. And the whole idea is to capture the water coming through the waterway. So that was something. Wood County, they worked great with me. We made the needed changes and stuff so we could do that, but it takes a little bit. And biggest thing is be straightforward. That the whole idea is a lot of people say, just go ahead and do it. It's always easier to ask for forgiveness later. I really don't believe that's the best way to go about something like this. So just, ask, work with them. Obviously I'm available if people got certain questions and stuff, but everybody was good, even working with the Army Corps of Engineers and stuff. They came out several times, and I had to give them the big picture, what I was really looking at doing in the end with this. And they worked with me to make sure I got all the proper permits and stuff like that. So it was in the end, it turned out great, but I got myself in a little bit of trouble along the way. Like I said, ambition kind of got ahead of paperwork now and then.
Yeah, definitely. Can you share a little bit about some other conservation practices you incorporate on your farm, your use of cover crops and no-till? When did you get started on those things?
Well, we had a kind of a big push with cover crops and no-till around 2014, going in 15 and 16, things really got moving. A lot of it came down to is the local environmental group, which is the Friends of Mill Creek Watershed. They were kind of seen as, adversary to the local farmers. And I just got to a point where I decided I'm going to show up to some of their meetings and see what their concerns are, and decide to work with them a little bit. So we kind of start talking, start bringing them out to the farms and stuff like that. And the whole issue with phosphorus, honestly, was very new to a lot of us farmers. We go to a local FSA office or anything, and you file your crop reporting. All our land is considered non-highly erodible land. So because it's non-highly erodible land, or classified as that because of the slope, we're not required to do any type of conservation practices. And for years, we've been told by many of the folks, well, you've got that big swamp next to you or whatnot, or flat land, so you guys really don't have issues. You don't have runoff events and stuff. And we found that to be quite contrary, because with our heavy, tight soils, that soil, when it gets in suspension with the water, it tends to just, we can literally have soil leave our farm, and that same soil make it all the way down the Wisconsin River, if not further. As long as it's flowing and being agitated, it'll stay in suspension. So there was so much we needed to learn by having a local environmental group. I basically, about a year or so in, had the discussion with them that I actually bluntly asked them if they would let me take an opportunity to try to get some farmers together and look at the water quality issues, for them to basically back off and let us do that, because so many farmers they didn't like the idea of an environmental group taking water samples in the creeks and stuff like that. They just felt like they were constantly under attack. And honestly, to my surprise, the local environmental group put a little faith in me and says, if you want to go out and work with your farmers and take lead on water quality stuff, go for it. And obviously that was their main objective, is water quality things. And I got involved with them a little more, and we started looking at some prairie habitats, pollinator things, potential for some outreach education stuff. And that's where, I took away their baby. So I had to give them something that would cry, sleep, drink, and wet, so to speak. And it turned out to be just a phenomenal relationship now, where they're heading up a lot of the work we're doing as far as the environmental stuff outside of water quality. And we have the farmer group taking a lead on water quality particularly.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great work. I don't see any questions coming into the chat at this time, but I think what we'll do now is welcome Tracey Arnold to the stage. And Tracey, John, and Melissa are going to talk a bit about bringing conservation into the classroom.
Just share my screen here.
So what we're going to do is ideally we're going to let Tracey take lead on this, and then we'll just kind of jump in here and there to add a little something to it. As Tracey likes to laugh when I say kind of farmer it up a little bit, but she's really the pro with this education stuff. How it all kind of happened is our farmer group got together and we had some things that we thought would be great for the general public to learn about what we're doing on farms and the opportunities we have for good growth and conservation and stuff. And we reached out to Tracey and Dan and Ken Schrader from UW Extension and a few other folks and asked them if they could help us facilitate that. And especially with Tracey taking lead, they went far beyond just helping. They really stepped up and brought it to what we'd almost consider or better than a fully professional level. So whenever we give presentations, we stuff like this, let Tracey take lead and we kind of jump in where we see fit. So Tracey, if you're ready, have at it.
Okay, thank you. So first thing is obviously congratulations on the award. If the video was too glitchy on this presentation, it's definitely worth going to YouTube and finding. It's incredible. It sums up the conservation practices that they do on the Eron farm. It's definitely worth watching. So this is just a little slide that shows you where the Farmers of Mill Creek group is. Central Wisconsin, Wood and Portage counties. You can see here on their logo, here's Wood County and here's Portage, and then this is the Mill Creek watershed right in here. So actually, John, I'm going to throw it right back to you. Why does the producer-led group put so much emphasis on the education?
The big thing came to be is talking with the farmers. They look at it as, this is the next generation. These kids coming through, a lot of their children, grandchildren are part of these schools. And, we had at the last few meetings, they basically said, as much as we're trying to learn and do cover crops and things, absolutely, let's continue with that. But the next generation is really going to be the ones that are going to have to really step it up with this conservation stuff. And they said, it just works so much better for them to be in big support of it and kind of see what they can come up with. So right now, a lot of you folks know that there's been just a lot more stress in the agricultural community than there has been in past years. I mean, we've got farmers we talk to all the time that they don't know if next week their milk's going to be getting shipped anymore. Those are things that I don't believe we've ever seen much in the past. So there's just, and obviously with this pandemic going on, just a lot of new stresses that these farmers are looking at it saying, we want to work with them. We want to stay involved with this stuff, but we really want to see the next generation learn these things because this is what's going to be important going into the future more and more. And so yeah, I had a complete board of farmers tell us this is what we want to see done. We really want to see this education taught at the schools if at all possible. And we thought who better to teach it than the best of the best. So that's why we got you, Tracey.
Okay, so next slide. One of our first projects, the farmer group really leads the way. They come up with the ideas and then we kind of catch the ball and see which way to run to make sure that we can pull these programs off. One of them that we started working on was the prairie impollinators. So what we do is we go into schools, back when we could go into schools, I should say, and we do a presentation all about prairies, the importance of prairies in Wisconsin, how it was such good farmland, what happened to it, the different types of prairie soils. We bring in soil samples so they can actually feel the difference between clay and silt and sand. We teach them about the adaptations of plants on prairies. And then one of our biggest goals at the end of it was we wanted to make sure we had dirty hands at the end, meaning the students, the teachers, the farmers that come along with us to help us teach, us as presenters, everybody has dirty hands at the end of it. This is one of the pictures, and you can see John and Melissa came with us to help this. As many people as the farmers as we can get to come out and help us, they are more than welcome to come at any time. The farmer group helps with all of the site prep for any of these presentations that we're doing. So if we need to smother some of the weeds, we need to get the compost delivered, the farmers do all of that. We just show up, do the presentation, bring some of the plants. The plants, we have a lot of different people that help us with these plants. We have Ann Graham, who supplies some of the seeds, and then she starts a lot of the plants for us too. Paul Skowinski and the Wild Ones group, they help us with the plants. And then Farm Shed also helps with some supplies with the different pots and things like that. Our goal after the presentation is that each student can plant a prairie plug at school if they're creating a garden at the school, or they would take it home. Most of them do get planted at school, which is neat because then we can come back year after year after year and we can see the progress. And it's also a huge educational thing that we can do. So here in this chart down here at the bottom, for about 3 years, we were kind of even just hovering just above about 100 kids. We struggled to get into schools. We were trying all kinds of different ways to get in there, but we couldn't figure out how to get in there. And then all of a sudden in 2019, one of our social media posts got picked up by the Center for Environmental Education. And all of a sudden our numbers went through the roof, which was fantastic. Then you see in 2020, all of a sudden the numbers drop. And that is how many kids we had lined up before COVID hit. So we had everything, like we start planning ahead of time. So January and February, we have all of our plants already started. So we had a bunch of plants. And then all of a sudden, March 2020 happened and all of our school programs got canceled. Well, we still had thousands and thousands of plants that we needed to find homes for. So the farmer group stepped up once again, and they decided, you guys can come out and plant these prairie plants in pollinator pledge sites. So these were 3 of the sites that we planted in. Farmers were helping to get the compost out there. We got it raked up, spread out. Prairie plants were planted, watered. We kept up on it all summer with the weeding, different plant. I think we had 13 different species in these, but they're looking pretty good right now. So that was kind of a cool plan B, I guess I would say, because we had a lot of plants that were supposed to be for kids, and then we kind of plan B'd it. But this next, if it works, is a video that I'll let play.
We can't hear the audio, Tracey.
Oh, hold on. Okay, let's try that. Can you hear it now?
We're meant for guys like him in school.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
But since this COVID pandemic, we didn't have classes. So we decided to come out here. There you go, put your tie on, that'll look nice. We decided to come out and plant them in the pledges. Back in February, the farmer-led group, during one of their meetings, came up with the idea to donate a small chunk of their land, their farm, and we did the Eron site, or the Otto site, and the Altman site with extra plants from the schools. So they didn't have to seed. We gave them a good start, didn't we, buddy? Do you have anything to say? Nothing? Thank you for your help. You were a big help today.
So that's one of my favorite videos. I still don't know how we held it together and didn't start cracking up when the tie came out of the pocket, but it was fantastic. This site is the Eron Pollinator Pledge. Melissa, this is some questions for you. The kids were involved with every single aspect of it that we did out there. I think our cars pulled up and those kids came running out literally in their pajamas, wanting to help us, which is exactly what we want. Why was it so important for you to have the kids out there and helping with it?
For them, it was just something new, something by that point when you guys were out there. I think we had been homeschooling-ish about a couple months, so John and I were both going insane as well. But it was just a neat experience for them in trying to explain, if we do this right, we're going to get the caterpillars, we're going to get the butterflies, and talking more about the whole life cycle aspect, that by simply planting these specialized plants, you can do a lot for your environment. And they got really excited about helping plant them. And then eventually coming out to see all the caterpillars and checking for those daily. It was really cool to see.
And,
How long did it, sorry, go ahead, John.
Oh, and so one thing unique I was going to mention, if you remember a few slides back, you saw Tracey and Dan in the classroom with a bunch of kids, kind of Jack's age, and they had their hands out wide. They had the hands up tall. Dan and Tracey were talking a little bit about, different plants, how they absorb sunlight and stuff. And so a unique thing is that summer, actually been two summers ago, I believe, I was out, so with the wedding barn, now and then we get a few weeds that we don't want. So I was out with a little brush mower behind the tractor, and I look over on top of the hill connected to the barn, and my son Jack is up there, and he just looks all sorts of upset.
Flailing his arms.
Yep, he's got his hands out wide, his hands up over the top of his head, and he's doing it. I'm like, he's putting on some kind of performance for me. So I stopped the mower tractor and I drive up there and I shut off. I said, Jack, what's wrong? And he says, Dad, he says, you're killing the monarch habitat out there. And he was going through the whole presentation that Dan and Tracey gave to him. And I just kind of realized I got to be a little more careful with some of the stuff I do, because, they're learning so much at these schools, and these kids are sponges. They pick this stuff up. And just it's phenomenal that folks like Dan and Tracey and Ken Schrader and Rachel White here, whatnot, that they can instill a conservation ethic into children at that kind of age in a classroom setting. I just found that to be absolutely phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Melissa, how long did it take the caterpillars to show up after we planted that?
So we were really surprised at how fast these plants grew. And I think one day I simply just went out there to check and see how they were growing. And all of a sudden you start to see all these caterpillars on the milkweed plants. The kids were so excited that we took them and then raised them through the chrysalis phase and got to hatch them out. So for the kids, that part of it was really awesome, that they were kind of we have outside cats, but those are the only actual pets that we have. So for them, they considered them their pets, and that we had to go find fresh milkweed every day to go feed them and take care of them. And for them, it was also kind of teaching them that responsibility aspect of, and with relating that to vegetables, and you're growing your own food, you're helping your environment. But then being able to see that end product of actually being able to release the monarchs, that was really cool for them. So they're really excited this year when we kind of explain that this is just naturally going to expand based on the seeds, and that they'll have an even bigger prairie for next year.
And a unique thing, when the farmer group got together and we realized, obviously, all these plants that you guys got started for us for the schools, that we needed a place to plant these things. I just remember sitting, I won't call out the one farmer in particular, but I was kind of, I always pick on somebody during the meeting, and of course I get it back too, but just kind of teasing, one guy in particular. And I said, well, at least you'll have, if you put a couple of these plants somewhere around, when you get in trouble, you at least got some, flowers for your wife to hopefully kind of smooth things over a little bit. And we all kind of chuckled about it for a little bit. And then we kind of got to thinking, like, if us as farmers, as the agricultural community, are promoting this in the schools, and why aren't we stepping it up to do something more on our lands? So that's where the whole pollinator pledge came into be, is that, and we also kind of realized that, we may have plateaued with the amount of schools that are involved. So the deal is that for every new classroom that gets involved, one of us on the farmer board or somebody in the Mill Creek watershed would put in a prairie habitat. Little did we know that it would expand exponentially, but it's something neat to look forward to, and letting the kids know that we're working with them on it, that the more that they're involved, the more we're involved. And it was just kind of a neat thing. It's a bit of a challenge, and I see these kids really get excited about that.
And then this fall, or last fall, I should say, we actually had a school out. So then they got to see the prairie when it was this was the end of August time. So It was still in bloom. We found a few more of the caterpillars. By that time, it had slowed down a little bit, but it was neat to see that how just planting these seedlings a few months before that it bloomed and blossomed, and just explaining to the kids the whole process, that they were kind of in awe at how fast you could do something like this too.
So Tracey, we'll turn it back to you because we know you got a bunch more slides for us.
I'll try to control myself. I get really excited about this stuff. One of the cool things with the field trip that Melissa was talking about, end of August, early September, was we had a bunch of monarch butterflies. Well, there is a citizen monitoring thing that you can tag the monarchs and then release them. So that center picture is one of the stickers, and then you write down a bunch of data about them. And then that lower picture, that's my kid. I may have gone a little out of control with the monarchs one year. So we tagged a whole bunch of them, and one of the monarchs in that picture actually made it from my house in Rudolph, Wisconsin, all the way down to Mexico. So it was 2,345 miles. So it was pretty exciting that, and the kids, I mean, my kids walk up and down the road checking milkweed. Like, you can't walk past the milkweed without them checking. So it's neat that the conservation practices that they see the farmers doing as we drive around lead to these conservation education programs. This was another idea from the farmer group that, let's see, back, and everybody gets a wagon wide. When they come out to the farm, everybody, that's one of the highlights. Everybody has to get one, which is totally fine. What happened in 2019 is John contacted Ken and I, and Ken, I know you're on here too. So here's Ken. And he threw this idea out to Ken and I that we were going to have 3 and 4-year-olds come out to the farm for a field trip. And we were going to teach them about cover crops, soils, and pollinators at 3 and 4 years old. And Ken and I looked at each other like, we're going to do what? But that was the idea. So the ball was thrown. Ken and I were like, all right, how are we going to do this? What tools do we have in our offices that we can make this happen? And it totally worked. We did have to take a couple breaks for the farm kiddies as they ran through. Or when we dug up some soil, we found some worms, but all of that is part of the education. So that was, I wasn't sure that one was going to work, but it totally did work. Then in 2020, the whole school decided they wanted to come out. Now, a disclaimer, some of these pictures are from 2019, some of them are from 2020, so you'll see some mask and some not mask, but that's why. So in 2020, when the whole school wanted to come out, we kind of followed the lead from the school of how to deal with COVID. We let them like, how would you like to do this? And we were just flexible and adapted to whatever they threw at us. They divided the school up into 3 different days. And then once they did that, we had different stations throughout each day. So we divided them up even to smaller groups. The farmers are out there the entire time for these field days. They're using the equipment to dig the soil pit, and the kids just think it's the greatest thing. Well, most of us think it's the greatest thing, not just the kids. So it's neat that the farmers are out there with us, with the students, the teachers, everybody is learning together. This bottom picture here was kind of a new thing that we tried this year. Parents built this arch bridge as part of their event barn. It goes over one of the egg drainage ditches. And in the bottom of it, there's all kinds of water and macroinvertebrates. So what we did is we piled the kids on the bridge so that they could look over. And then this is Jen McNally. She's another one that helps us. What we did is we went down and we scooped up in the muck, and we found dragonfly larvae and mayflies, and we found all kinds of cool things that were living in there. Then what we can do is we can talk about buffers and how it's super important that the farmers use the buffers and what it can prevent the sediment from going in there. So we tie ag back to everything that we possibly can, along with whatever conservation practices we have right there. This was kind of a funny, this was with the 3rd graders or the 3-year-olds. Those sunflower heads were right at their head level. So we went walking through the sunflowers, and those sunflower heads were leaning down, and they would hit every one of them in the head as they walked by. We adjusted that a little bit. This is still in 2020. This was the older group that came out. So we kind of adapted our presentations to the older group. So in this one down here, this is Jen again, teaching about watersheds. So we went from a big one all the way down to the Mill Creek to show them exactly where it was. We had these little watershed models so they could put hot chocolate down, and then you would make it rain, and then they could see it run off, and then they would put conservation practices down and see how different it would make. With the older kids, we upgraded to this groundwater model where you can inject dye into the model and watch it run through to see what groundwater actually does. These two pictures here, this is the actual pond that was in the videos and that John was talking about. So this is the field that drains into this pond. And this picture is on top of all of the sediment that they stockpiled. This is on top of it. So we literally drive the tractor right to the top. We can get out, we can talk about it. We can show them the conservation practices. We have the pivots right here. And for one of the groups, John ran down and he turned on the pivot so they could actually see how that worked. The bus driver got a little nervous. I think he may have been in the danger zone of getting soaked, but kids thought it was hilarious. One of the other things that we can do on top of here is we can kind of group the whole day. We can review it. We got pollinators up there. We got soils. We got conservation practices. So that was kind of a cool wrap up for those field trips. John, maybe you want to hit on this one a little bit, the cover crop field day. This was in December of 2019. This was kind of a unique thing because this group, we had farmers, we had ag classes, we had the lake group, the Packers group, and then some agency staff too. John, you want to talk a little bit about this one?
Yeah, so we got in a habit of every winter doing kind of an annual wrap up with everything that's been going on that year. And we like to tour around and look at stuff. Obviously for the farmers, early December typically seems to be the best time just because hopefully you've got the majority of your work done for the year and it's not quite Christmas time yet. So it's worked well for us. I know the first year we did it, a lot of the people that came along are just like, how is this going to work? You know, we're not going to see everything's covered in snow. And we brought some shovels and stuff around and some brooms. And it was actually more exciting to dig underneath the snow and see a living cover crop than, you know, just to see it in the middle of September or October or something like that. So yeah, we got a whole bunch of farmers together. We actually did several tours. That day, we typically will do a set of morning tours with a couple buses, have a lunchtime where we kind of give kind of a wrap up overview of the year, and then we do afternoon tours. And so as you see, the ones on the left are more of the ones with some of the farmers and stuff, and then on the right hand side you'll see some more of the high school students that come out. And uniquely, working with the high schools, and a lot of the numbers that we have for like the pollinator education that you saw early on, these students and stuff aren't included in those numbers. So like this last spring, that first week of April, we had 9 high schools that were signed up wanting to come out to our barn and then tour from here and learn about cover crops and stuff. And obviously, unfortunately, we had that all got canceled, but I've been staying in contact with those folks and they're really excited to come out and see what we're doing. So yeah, it's a unique program, and we keep going. We follow the lead of what the farmers want to see, and the farmers take input from some of the local environmental groups and other folks as far as things to try. And it really becomes a unique learning experience. And every year we seem to grow more and more as a community as we keep progressing with these tours. So
I think one of the unique aspects of the Mill Creek group too is it's not just education with the kids, it's education with anybody and everybody that Erin's talked to, that any of us agency people, even if like at the event barn, they have stuff on wild parsnip, they have like education never ever stops. And we all learn together. One of the things John had said was, even if it's a failure, you're still learning. It's not really a failure because you learned, okay, we're not going to do that again. I know the Auburndale High School had a unique program, and they were nervous because they didn't want to tell the farmers that they failed. And John was like, no, that's part of it. Like it's okay to fail, which I think is kind of unique with the Mill Creek group, that they always are learning with everybody, not just little kids, it's everybody. I just wanted to highlight some of the education team, and this is always expanding, it seems, too. Like I said, the farmers really gear the ideas. The ideas come from them, and they say, hey, what about this? They kind of throw the ball up there, and these are the people that pull off these events. So we got Ken and Dan and myself and Jen McNally and Rachel. So we have a whole lot of people that are extremely knowledgeable in their profession, and we can adapt our presentations to most age groups. And if one of us isn't available, we can also cover other people's expertise and enough that you're still going to get a quality experience coming out to the farm. So I know, Erica, we're getting kind of close on time here, but John, just wrapping up, what advice do you have for other groups that want to interact in the community?
Be open-minded. A big use that we've found with our farmer group is by having our farmer group be active. We've become a place that environmental interest and things like that, they'll come to us. And instead of it seeming like, let's say there's an issue in the watershed or some type of something goes on at some farm, instead of some people going after that in particular farmer himself or whatnot, a lot of times they'll come to the group and just ask, hey, there's something happened here, or they saw something that they didn't feel that they were comfortable with or concerned about. And so it's the farmers never feel like they're being attacked by any means. We figured out how to make it work so well, and now that we've been doing it for so many years, there's just a comfort level that more and more unique things happen. And now, kind of pushing into the future, there's a lot of energy around taking field corners that traditionally don't work with larger equipment to get into, that potentially let some of these schools and stuff come out and put in some habitats there. One of the big things we've been seeing successful is setting up some prairie habitats and having a lot of predatory insects there. So in one of my fields in particular, I don't know for sure, but it seems like it saved me from needing to go out there and actually spray some insecticide to kill the aphids. We had some predatory wasp and stuff. So there's just so much we're learning, but the biggest thing is we don't know what direction we're going outside of forward, and just getting input from everybody. And now the unique thing is working with some of the high schools, they really want to step up and take some lead on just some of the information and direction with some cover crops and things like that. They want to do studies with it. Obviously, we in agriculture understand that many things, it takes a 3, 5, possibly 7 year or longer continuously doing the same practice to really see the long-term benefits, just because our weather's different continuously. And to have these high schools want to step up and do this is just phenomenal. And they're getting feedback that us as a farmer group wouldn't see, because a lot of them have contacts that they're related to or somehow know other farmers who haven't tried some of these practices yet. They're comfortable with going out, they can talk to them and kind of hear about what are the concerns that are holding them back from trying. So it's really helping us get that, the people that have kind of been holding out and trying some of these things, to figure out how to get them involved. So it's a community effort. We're all in this one together. And it's phenomenal hearing back from the teachers and principals just about how well these presentations that Tracey and Dan and Ken and all the folks helping, how well that helps with the classroom stuff. And I actually just heard back from a local principal that he said by having the students go out in the field and learn stuff that is basically what they're learning in the classroom at the time, that it just supports it, that the kids are so much more active in learning. They're more engaged in what they're learning in school because they get to see something hands-on. So that's phenomenal. That's phenomenal to be part of that.
John, I got one last question and then we'll turn it back over to Erica to see if there's any questions in the chat. Last week we were talking and you had an analogy about a campfire and the part that education plays into it. Do you remember telling me that?
Yeah.
Do you want to share that?
I never have much time for going camping, but a lot of folks, they get all excited about these farmer-led groups. So they'll show up. A lot of times it's the local conservation staff and stuff, people that are basically hired to be part of these things. And they get those things going, and there's just, it's all this fuel being tossed on this fire, which is phenomenal. It gets everything up and running. Big thing is we really need to have, as I call, some good hardwoods in that fire. Because when things settle down, a lot of these farmer-led groups, I'll talk to them several years in, they'll say, we've kind of burnt out. We've spent a lot of our fuels. It's getting hard to continue, or what are we going to do to try something new? And we've experienced that ourselves with the farmers of Mill Creek. And what we did is we reached out to the community and looked at where they see some of this stuff should go, and just been open-minded. And that's really where it took off with the kids and stuff, kind of taking that lead. They've become part of that, the wood that keeps the fire burning. So now and then some great ideas come along, and it's kind of like throwing some new fuel on that fire. It really flares up. But long term, being part of working with the schools and just that ambition, I believe that's going to keep our watershed group very strong.
Very cool. Erica, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and then I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Thanks, Tracey. So I just have one last question for you. And then we do have a couple questions in the chat. So my question is if you would just share a little bit more about your producer-led watershed group and how your group got formed. Oh, you're muted.
Yep. All right.
There you go.
So the Friends of Mill Creek Watershed Group, which is the local citizen-based environmental group, they got formed in early 2000s, and there's just a lot of backlash. Farmers just really got uneasy with knowing that there's a local environmental group that's trying to do water quality stuff. So it just, I think things were really rough. So I got involved in, I believe, around 2012, 2013, somewhere in that range, and started showing up to some of the Friends of Mill Creek Watershed Group, like I said, which is the citizen-based environmental group. And that's where I kind of start talking to them, like, are you guys willing, if I can get some farmers together, would you give us a chance to take lead on this water quality stuff? So in 2015, we started meeting with, we'd actually had a joint meeting where the Friends of Mill Creek Watershed Group would meet first, and we actually did this at my workshop, and then the farmer group would meet separately too, and that was basically the start of the Farmers of Mill Creek Watershed Group. It's just we weren't, there was nothing official about it. It was just a bunch of farmers stepping up, chipping in, being part of that. And then when in 2016, we reached out and realized there was some funding to do some things. That's when we really got everything rolling, where we start looking at, hey, we can try some of these practices. We could do a little bit of cost sharing with some of them. That was a big thing that really, it really brought us up to speed with stuff. There was interest there was excitement there, but having a little bit of funding behind it really made a difference. Obviously, it covers our busing and stuff like that. So everybody kind of wanted to do it. It's just that with the producer-led groups, it really kind of honed in, like, this is a format that we're going to follow, and it's worked very well for us.
Great, thanks. So right now I'm going to launch a poll for those of you that are still with us, and then we're going to keep asking John and Melissa questions that are here in the chat. So if you're with us, please fill out the poll, and then we'll get to some of these questions. So from Tanya, how many schools do you have to work with? Or how many schools have you worked with?
Oh, a lot. That might even, Tracey might have a better handle on that. We continuously have more classrooms calling. It's just a lot of times they end up being outside of our watershed. So we got to be a little careful on how, we obviously want to work with them. It's just, trying to balance out our time that we're trying to focus more on our watershed. This last spring here,
We had daycares.
yeah, we had
At a
daycares wanting
daycare
to come
that
out.
asked, yeah.
A lot of the people that are heads of the local like children's museums, they want to bring kids out. So 2020 would have been a banner year for us as far as bringing kids out to the farm. It just obviously with the pandemic, it kind of put a hamper on that. But yeah, Tracy, if you want to answer kind of where we're at with classrooms, you got a better idea with the numbers.
There's a lot of potential classrooms to get into. We're just trickling out, and I think just the prairie presentations that we did, I think we were in 13 or 14 different schools. With having 2 different counties, we have Rapids and Auburndale and Marshfield, and then in Portage we have Point and Amherst. So we have a lot of potential programs that we can help pull from if they're interested. It's just a matter of, like John said, finding the time and the resources to pull it all off. But I think word's getting out pretty quick about the quality of the programs and the quality of the experience by having the presentations and then coming to the farm and seeing all those conservation practices on the ground.
Yeah. And a unique part of it is we really cover every aspect or every interest. There's not a time that a presentation would, it may seem more environmentally based with the presentation. The farmers are absolutely 100% on board with it. It's what they ask for. So we've had, many groups that are traditionally seen as like an anti-ag group or whatnot. They're actually part of the presentation. Often we give them an opportunity to present. When we're out in the fields and stuff like that, we've had in the past where we had some handheld water quality monitors where we let people that are, some of the best known environmental minded folks in the area actually come out and be part of that presentation. And that's really unique. So there's, we really don't see that, well, this is a farm program or this is an environmental program. This is just a conservation minded, education that we're doing, and it's for everyone, and that's the most important thing. It's for everyone, and the farmers, they so much appreciate seeing kids and stuff come out there. The only time I ever hear anything less than perfect from a farmer is that he says, well, my grandson goes to this school and he hasn't been to your farm yet, and I'm on the farmer board, so when do they get to come out? And it's like, well, we'll work on it. We'll find some room. But yeah, I honestly haven't heard anything negative about our programs at all, because everybody's involved. Everybody's got an opportunity to be part of it. So.
Have you worked with, you mentioned working with high schools. Have you worked with any FFA chapters? Heidi here says local Wisconsin FFAs are looking for videos to help them.
Oh, absolutely. I believe Mark Knoyer over in Auburndale, his FFA, their chapter, they're coming out here. They're involved quite a bit.
You're doing videos, farmer videos.
Yeah. Yep. So right now, we're kind of new to this whole Zoom meetings and stuff like that. Especially getting a bunch of farmers to be part of that is really interesting. But what we come up with is our farmer board. We decided we want to do some videos that are a little more personal. So with working with Dan and Tracy and Ken and Rachel Whitehair's kind of been our go-to person as far as the recording and editing the videos. We've been going out to our farmer board and beyond, meeting with these folks and just hearing from them in their words, standing in their workshop or in their barn. To have that farmer explain why this education work we're doing is so important. We talk about the cover crops and everything else, but to hear from our farmer board in particular about why they want to see us move forward with more of this outreach education stuff, it's really a unique thing. And it's something that, we're hoping to see some of those videos out here available really soon, but these guys care a lot more about what's going on than most people understand, and especially that to see that next generation. I've had a few farmers tell me that they think their kids, there might be an opportunity, their kids may want to take over the farm or just be part of some type of agronomy or something because they see how much, how much they care about it. And it's, I've really been impressed with how much these guys really do care about working with the community on this.
Great. A question from Megan came in. If John and Melissa, if you'd be willing to talk to some possible producers interested in an LED group in Adams County.
Oh, absolutely. The number one thing that I tell people what a farmer-led group is, we really got to make sure, you're typically the facilitators that are helping with this is going to be your land and water conservation and folks like that. And you think of it as a bit like a marriage in a way that if the facilitators get a little further ahead than the farmers are with certain things, even if it was the right move, there could be some resentment there. And you really got to be careful with these things. And that's why it's also often we make sure that we have stuff that this is what the farmers want to do with, and we move forward with that. We've got a ton of neat ideas coming from, Dan and Tracey and Ken and everybody asking, hey, what do you guys think about this? And they give it to our farmer group, and we kind of look at what we like to do, and we toss it back to them and say, hey, this is the direction we'd like to see done. And we let them use their professional skills to really enhance what we want to see happen. So, and the great thing is right now with the people, the facilitators we work with, they understand that a farmer-led group has to be farmer-led, truly farmer-led. So, if you don't have that, it's just not going to work, I don't think. We've seen so many groups that the facilitators are trying to take lead with stuff. And like I said, there's going to be a resentment there. Even if it was the right move, you're going to get resentment from the farmers. And that doesn't make for a good marriage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely not. This question's from Stephanie. Is your outreach only within the watershed, or do you include other areas of the two counties?
We include, oh boy, we've done a lot of work in Marathon County where they've come down here. So we're really open to anybody. Obviously, our priority is folks within the Mill Creek watershed, but the majority of the tours, when we do our big winter program, we make sure we got the folks within the watershed take priority, but we have so many groups outside of that come in and get to be part of that. And we obviously cover the cost and stuff of them coming out. So we love working with anybody, but obviously our priority is Mill Creek. Outside of Mill Creek, if it's in Portage and Wood County, we do everything we can, but we've worked with many school groups that have come from other counties. And yeah, it's great to have it. And especially if it's a bigger field day thing, it's simply just a matter of another school bus or whatnot, or tour or two that we got to cover. So that works great. Absolutely.
Great. Looks like we have one more question. What would be your advice for a newly forming producer-led watershed group to not get burnt out or too fast with projects and community involvement?
As I kind of talked about a little earlier with some of these farmer-led groups, you got to find, you need a pilot light all the time that's going to be burning, and we found it a lot of that to be with this outreach youth education. There's always new kids showing up interested, and you will be working on so many projects, and you just get to a point where you start kind of feeling a little burnt out. And then we'll hear from a school where they got some great idea, and we're like, we want to be part of that. Let's absolutely. So the schools are really, I believe, what's kind of carrying us through the low spots to make sure that the flame doesn't go out. They're constantly there, bringing ideas and wanting to hear what we're doing out in the agricultural community. And especially with the pollinator stuff, so many of the farmers were starting to realize the importance of having pollinators around and really incorporating that. And to have these school kids come out, see that stuff, and learn about different efforts we're doing on the farm, and learn about efforts that these students would like to have us see. The kids they repeat everything their parents say, whether they're supposed to or not. So there's been many times where we're given a presentation, especially the younger ones, and they'll just they'll blurt something out that would traditionally we should be offended by, and we look at it and say, this is the area we need to improve on, and we take the opportunity to explain to that child that here's what we're doing with it, but obviously we're trying our best, and so that's really a unique part. If you really want to know what's happening in a community, the kids will tell you whether you want to hear it or not. You'll hear it from them, so it
And
helps gauge.
part of being able to get into the schools was the funding. So once they found out we can cover the transportation, we can cover their lunches, that was another step to try to persuade the schools that we've got everything covered. So it's just a matter of their logistics of getting the kids out here. So that I think was a big selling point for them. Or if they had a teacher contact, they would talk to the teacher, but then it was easy for them to go and propose it to their principal or whoever, just saying that we were able to cover those costs, just because there's a lot of budget cuts and schools aren't able to afford the field trips right now.
Yeah, that's a good point, definitely. Well, I want to give a huge thank you and congratulations to John, Melissa, and Tracey. Thank you so much for sharing and talking with us today. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.